Welcome to Behind the Teams. I'm your host, Nicole Howe. My career has been defined by a search for what separates the good from great and why some teams succeed and others don't. I've looked at this from the court as a professional athlete, through the lens of psychology throughout my studies, and now from the inside of design and product recruitment. On this show, we sit down with leaders to find out how they approach leadership. We dig into their stories, behaviors, and beliefs about what defines success and how to help your team perform at its best. Today, I'm joined by Gemma Poesaste, a leader who has spent the last decade designing, building, and running high-performance in-house creative teams. Most recently, she led the transformation of Telstra's internal creative studio into Rome, a 30-person agency acting as a genuine strategic partner to the business. We spoke about what it takes to lead transformation with speed and humanity, how to build psychological safety within creative teams, and why getting creatives in the room changes everything. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode, and I'm so excited to be diving into this conversation with Gemma Poesaste. Gemma, how are you?
Hi, good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because I think the journey that you've been on, obviously through your career, but over the last 12 to 18 months, I'm really interested to dig a bit deeper into. But maybe for the listeners first, do you mind just kind of giving a bit of an overview? Who's Gemma? What have you been up to?
Yeah, what a big question to start off with. Happy to dive in. I'm Gemma. Obviously, I've been working in housing for the past 10 years. I work by helping to design, build, and run high-performing creative teams on the inside of brands. I'm obsessed with bringing the right creative culture inside corporate entities because it's not usually where it would thrive. But we know that creativity can power growth. And when you unlock the power of creativity inside a brand, it can have commercial benefits, it has performance benefits. So it's a really exciting time to be in housing as well. Creativity is super powered at the moment by all things AI, people, process. So it's really exciting. I came back to Australia at the end of 2023 after spending some time in the UK. And I was just really excited to get back into the market and really understand where in-housing was. And I was pleasantly surprised that it is really on fire here in APAC in Australia. And I'm just really excited to be a part of that industry and help support creativity thrive on the inside.
Amazing. And I know, so when you came back to Oz, you've obviously joined Telstra to build out Rome, their internal agency. Give the listeners a bit of an overview of that. Like when you started, because it sounds like a big remit. How did you, like where did it start? What have you kind of been doing over the last 12 to 18 months? Is that right?
Yeah, it's been about 12 months since I joined Telstra. It's been 6 months since we launched Rome agency. When I joined, we were already a really efficient studio. We were very production focused and we were delivering for the business at a large volume. But the transformation really was focused on bringing creativity to the heart of Telstra and bringing creativity to the business. The model needed to adapt, it needed to change. And for me, that's the most exciting part about in-housing is the transformation. So I jumped on board. I met Brent at the end of 2024. And I was really enticed by the opportunity to come and really transform the team. We've transformed from a small outfit of about 12 people to 30. And we're taking on a lot of our customer experience channels. So social, one-to-one, digital, retail. And we're really responsible for making sure that the brand shows up in those channels in the best way possible, that it translates the craft and the brand correctly for those channels and for those customers. It's been a really fast-paced transformation. I think we set ourselves some really big and ambitious goals to transform quickly at the rapid pace that we needed to ensure that we could deliver amazing quality for the business and our partners. To say that we've come out the other side and we're putting our tools down would be a lie. We're continuing to adapt. We're continuing to change. And that's what's really exciting about transformation. It's never really done. So we're really focused on at the moment making sure that we've got the right tools and processes and people and skills in place to take us into the future.
Yeah, I know you mentioned there was, I guess, the need to kind of change the model of how it was done previously, maybe kind of shifting more from like a studio to more of a strategic partner to the stakeholders that you're
Mhm.
working with. And transformation is a big, big word. What do you like? How do you kind of distill that down more into the day-to-day challenges? Was there anything that you kind of experienced that you weren't prepared for? Anything that surprised you in this?
Yeah, I think transformation is a big word. And you always ask the question, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. You've really got to break down the transformation into phases, into pieces that are more digestible. And I think once we did our discovery and our assessment of what the business really needed, we did a lot of interviews, we did a lot of scoping with what was required. We were sort of able to look at the transformation into almost like a two-pace transformation. There were things that definitely needed to happen rapidly at speed. They were either filling gaps that we weren't delivering on or changing systems that were outdated, that weren't serving the team anymore. So that was really rapid. We identified, built the solution, and then we launched. But then on the other side, there's always this people side transformation that always comes as a surprise, I think, when you realize that taking people on the journey and communicating the transformation isn't just a task on the list. It's actually a really big part of what we consider to be successful in transformation. We actually started out by taking a temperature check of our partnership with the marketing team. We really wanted to understand to what level were we partnering with them and what areas could we improve. And that was very human centric. So making sure that people felt that they had the right skills, but also that they had the right forums to really share how the transformation was feeling. So we talk a lot in our team about psychological safety. We talk a lot about it at Telstra. And transformation is one of those things where psychological safety is it's just such an important ingredient for people to be able to feel like they can voice their concerns, bring it to the group, and really solve for problems together. I found surprisingly or unsurprisingly that those two parts of the transformation were existing at the same time, that they needed to happen, one fast, maybe one slightly slower, and that's okay. And if you can be successful in both lanes and you can make rapid change happen with really quick wins and runs on the board to prove that the transformation is possible, then it actually has a positive impact on the psychological safety of that transformation and the way people feel. And I think
Mm,
that's really important as a leader and as a leader of transformation, that we have empathy for how the transformation feels in such a rapid, short period of time. I'm very grateful. Our team has taken on the transformation with both hands, and they've poured their energy and poured their skills into making sure that this is the best transformation for the business, for the team. And we've come out the other side really reflecting on we've only improved the partnership. It's only gotten stronger, it's gotten deeper. And we know that through the feedback we've now received on the other side, that people feel we've brought a different partnership. It's not just an execution studio. We are a real partner in the success of marketing and the success of bringing creativity at the brand.
hmm. Psychological safety, I think, is hugely important. And I'd love to put a pin in that because I definitely want to come back to that and expand a little bit. But I'm curious actually because you mentioned that you guys were quite ambitious with this transformation and you had goals that you wanted to get to quite quickly. Was that motivated by like you guys saw that there was a gap you needed to kind of plug quite quickly? Or was it more about knowing that sometimes if you're doing change, if you drag it out for a long time from a people perspective, some people lose engagement? Was that kind of both that you were trying to address? What was the motivation there?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of transformation theory around success. I know I quote Katie Milkman quite a lot. I was quite influenced by her book How to Change, which was given to me by another transformation leader. And she talks about the turning of a leaf and the physical representation that has on the human brain around change and transformation. So for us, we knew from the very beginning that we needed to have a turning of the leaf, and it needed to happen soon because it represented something that people could tangibly see and physically get behind. So that was a big part of our rebrand, and doing that quickly and making sure that we were able to go to market with that was really important. And it's also about having quick wins and really fast paced wins at the beginning of a transformation. She talks about, making sure you can strike things off a list and feel motivated in the change. So that's really important, which to your point about when a transformation can feel very long without some early wins, it can feel really tiresome and you lose energy, and then the transformation sort of slows down. So we were trying to keep that energy high and make sure that we could transform. And typically, an in house agency model, you can transform in 90 days. It's completely possible. So, setting ourselves something that we could run at, that we could also really put up on a calendar and really push and drive ourselves to. That's the other thing about transformation. Deadlines are incredibly important. If they're moving or shifting all the time, it's like that dreaded exam date. Normally, you have that really big boost of energy just before a deadline to get something done. And I think having that in our mind throughout the transformation meant that the team were really energized and they knew we were running at a finish line, which is also a really big part of transformation.
For sure. And going back then to the piece about psychological safety, because I think being able to take risk in any space, but I think even more so in creative teams, and when you're trying to build out, I guess, that culture of, being a strategic partner and building that brand-led creative. How have you, like over the years, what do you kind of look for to tell you, okay, this is a space? Like what behaviors, what processes, what rituals do you have that tell you the team does feel safe to take those risks?
I think it's in creatives feel safe when they're able to bring ideas to the table or bring things that are slightly risky or slightly out of the box. I think when you've got a group of creatives who are always sticking inside the box or playing it safe, as you call it, you can start to assume that they don't feel safe coming with bigger, better ideas. I think our team, the behaviors that they show when they do feel safe is they come with the mantra of if we can dream it, we can build it. And for them to be able to dream and feel safe to bring those ideas to the table means that you've built the right safety net for them. I also think our leadership famously talks about, being hard on the work and kind on the people. And that only works when you've got really clear safety amongst the team. To talk about the work separate to the individual and really stress test it and really critique it in an environment that everyone understands is all about getting to the best outcome and all about getting to the best work. So that's incredibly important. If people can come to those sessions where we're reviewing creative, we're talking about creative, but they know that anyone in that room is really looking for that person to succeed and really looking for their idea to succeed. So we have a mantra in Rome, which is all about yes and. So building on people's ideas, building on people's confidence in those rooms is really important for creatives. A corporate environment is not generally a place where creatives will thrive. So it is also about protection. I think a big part of that safety is about protecting the work, protecting the ideas until they're ready to be seen by the wider team, whether that's marketing or legal or product, wherever it might be that the idea has to travel in the business. It's really important that we protect the ideas. And I think when you work with creatives, their ideas are an extension of themselves. So if you're protecting their idea, they ultimately feel that you're protecting them in that environment, and they gain that psychological safety through that process of you protecting the idea until it's at a place that it's ready to share and ready to be released into the world. That's what they see as being safe and being protected.
For sure. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you on that point. I think creatives, their identities are super tied in to their work. So I think it's natural. Like if someone's going to give critique about what you've produced, I think a lot of times it's really difficult for creatives to separate themselves. But the way that you kind of frame it makes a lot of sense, that you're almost kind of, creating that protective barrier for them.
Exactly.
Have you seen a challenge though in then helping them also, like, because I think leadership is so important to create that bridge between the two. but
Mm.
still help them kind of prepare for stakeholders or prepare for maybe, if it goes live, what if it's not, positive feedback? Have you had to intervene in those situations where it's just out of your hands? It might not be, it might not have gone the way you wanted and someone's taking it really personally.
Yeah, it's there's always going to be factors within an idea where perhaps the constraints or the channels or even something as simple as budget means that the idea is not going to live in its purest intent. And I think creatives have to be guided through the process. I think the jump scare of seeing an idea in the wild that hasn't followed the intent of where it originally started from is always going to be scarier than the journey of walking the creative through. So we have really clear processes with our creatives internally about making sure that they're on the journey the whole way from start when the brief is brought in all the way through to dispatch when the idea leaves the room. So I think it's more about the transparency of those challenges and sharing them with creatives. I think sometimes decisions get made in rooms where they may not be present. So making sure that they either are in the room or they're informed from the room really helps us circumnavigate that sort of jump scare at the end of, my goodness, my idea didn't land the way that I wanted it to. And that includes being really open with feedback. I think where the in-house advantage, having the creatives in the room at the table when the idea is being discussed, they bring a really different point of view. So I would argue most of the time when feedback is being given and a creative can join the session and really talk about the essence or the background to the idea, you can either overcome or justify the feedback together in a group, in as a team, rather than it being a real traditional process of client feedback goes into engine, account manager digests it, make sure it's not going to hurt the creatives, then give it to the creatives and mince it up a bit. I think having the creatives in the room to hear it directly from marketing, they can then understand the business challenges, they can then understand the commercial challenges, the audience challenges. And trust me, when I've brought creatives into the room, we've gotten to great solutions. So I don't think they should fear being a part of those conversations. I don't think they should fear hearing that feedback. And that's a real advantage to in-housing creative for brands, is that you can break down those barriers and get to better solutions, better outcomes, sometimes faster, sometimes easier because they're right there. They're sitting next to the team inside the business.
It's such a good point because I think psychological safety is not necessarily about being kind, right? It's about creating that space where the person feels safe to take the risk. And if constructive feedback comes from it, I think just from a human perspective, like if I was in the room hearing it and understanding the context, there's less chance that you're going to take that personally. So I think it's so important that people aren't removed from where they're getting the feedback from.
Totally. Context is everything. Whether you're presenting the idea or you're feeding back on the idea, context is such a huge ingredient in making sure that the idea lives, breathes, has the right inputs. It's the whole reason that we have really good briefing. It's the whole reason that we have really good debriefs. It's making sure that the context is always presented, always shared and transparent.
Yeah. And I know you're passionate about it, but I think that's why like in-housing creative teams do a better job because they can be right there, with it.
Yeah, we can be closer to the business problem. And I think it's all about finding the right solutions. And sometimes a creative is bringing a different point of view. And I've seen it so many times where the room has a certain skill set and you throw a creative in there and it unlocks creative thinking amongst that group that may or may not have been there before or just not present in that conversation. So that creative might not come up with the exact solution, but just stimulating the conversation and stimulating other people's creative thinking is a win in any room, in any business by having creatives around the table.
What do you think's the biggest misconception or misunderstanding that non-creatives have about leading or managing creatives?
Really interesting question. I think there's a big misconception that creatives aren't commercial, that creatives aren't understanding that they only care about the creative idea and the output. I think creative people are naturally problem solvers. They want to get to a great outcome. depending on whether they're visual creatives or they're word and narrative-based creatives, it'll show up in different ways. But at the heart of it, they want to solve problems. And if that problem comes with a commercial context as a part of why we're here, why is this a problem? I think creatives are open and want to be a part of those conversations and want to hear the business context. So I think the misconception is, well, we can't give that insight to a creative because they don't care about commercials, or they don't care that we need to sell this product, or they only care about the pictures and the words. And that's dangerous, because I think if you leave out insights or leave out context from a brief, you won't get to those amazing creative outcomes that are so pointed, or so in tune, or tapped into culture, because the creatives haven't been given the context of the business problem. So that, I'd say that's a pretty big misstep for leaders who aren't creative but are responsible for creative people.
For sure. And I think I would second that by saying also that I think sometimes they're not given the opportunity to come in early enough to know that context. And then obviously at the end outcome address how that's solved, for that, business problem or commercial problem, which again, I think if you give creatives that opportunity, get them in the room, help them understand, what the context is, let them go from there, you're going to get better outcomes for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are so many great examples. Canva is one, Oatly is another, where creativity came first, before the marketing department, before the media channels, before product. Creativity came first, and it's really interesting to see those business models and how successful they've been when they have brought creative up further in the business discussion and put creativity around the table. It's really interesting to see, but it's clearly successful for business models because their products are better, their marketing lands better in culture, they've got a greater understanding of their customer, and every single touch point for their customer is beautifully crafted or creatively driven first and then targeted out via channels. Yeah, I do think it's really important, as you say, to have creativity up further in the funnel.
For sure. And I know you've been really generous with our time, so I want to make sure I get you
Yeah,
out
of course.
on time. But I just want to kind of round out, because I know that you also talk about creativity with a lot of intent as well. If I get you to reflect on the journey that you've been on with Rome, because I think it's such a significant one to come into an organization, really transform that. What would you say? What would you do with more intent over the last 12 months if you got that time again?
Wow. Hindsight is 2020. Is that the saying? Where to reflect back and think about
You
the
probably
last
haven't
12
even had
months.
time to stop and think.
Yeah, it is really interesting to have time to stop and think. I recently went through a coaching process, a leadership coaching process, where it forced me to sit down and reflect on what's happened over the last 12 months. And I think I walked away from that saying the last 12 months has exceeded my expectations. I think in previous positions, in previous agencies I've worked in, designing, building, and running an in-house agency was always on the cards, always the task, always the thing to be done. Whereas I think the difference this time around, for me personally, was really bringing purpose and being able to communicate that to the people on the transformation. I think this was really an opportunity to make sure that everyone went on the journey, that everyone saw its success. So I think reflecting on the 12 months, it's been an absolute journey. It's definitely exceeded my expectations of the reaction. The response we've had from the industry, the response we've had from inside Telstra, from our partners. I think maybe we outdid their expectations of what we were going to launch, what we were going to do. But again, coming back to my inspiration or my philosophy, thanks to Katie Milkman, around really making that leaf change and turning it over and proving to the business that we could do it. I think in the back of my mind, I always thought if we could show the business how we could transform even just this small patch really rapidly and show a significant change in the quality of output. If we can do that in Rome, we can do it anywhere in the business. And we become our own case study for making change across the business, bringing creativity across the business and what it can do. So I think that I didn't expect that to be our greatest case study and for that to be our greatest piece of work. So at the moment, we're kind of sitting in that success, sitting in how that feels and working with different parts of the business to make sure that we can help them change. We can help them have the best output. We can help influence commercial and customer-based projects. And that's what's really exciting about our change, I think, over the last 12 months.
I love that. We'll have to leave it there, but I'll have to get you back on once you've taken over the entire business. Get you back on, and because there's so many different areas that I'd love to pull on and chat about. But I so appreciate your time coming on. I really enjoyed the
Thank
conversation.
you. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode of Behind the Teams. If you found value in today's episode, the best way to support the show is to share it with one leader who's currently building a team. For more insights on the intersection of product design, psychology, the future of work, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'm Nicole Howe, and this is Behind the Teams. Thank you for listening.